All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I am Thomas, and I do educational material, usually of the obscure and esoteric variety, but very important stuff that I have found that nobody knows anything about, but that if they did, at least some of them would find it to be important. We are looking at, I believe this is the 136th video on the reciprocal system of theory, which is a theory of everything that was proposed by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990. His work has been carried forward by various people since then, but very few people actually know about the reciprocal system. But it does provide a theory of everything, meaning that you can plug it into any subject and understand things and get answers. And the basic idea of the theory, it's called the reciprocal system because of the reciprocal relationship between time and space. And that relationship is based on his notion of a universe of motion. And that is in contrast with the legacy scientists' former universe of matter and universe of energy that is known best from the work of Newton and Einstein. And but Larson really says, look at E equals mc squared. If energy can be converted into matter and vice versa, that means that neither one of those things can be the most fundamental thing. There's something underlying both of them that is more fundamental, and that is the c squared part, or motion. And so Larson goes with that. The universe is made out of motion, and motion is the relationship between space and time. Space and time therefore have a generalized reciprocal relationship, just like a fraction, 2/3, its reciprocal is 3/2. And 2/3 and 3/2 both have the same qualities, 3 and 2. But they are inversions of one another. So too with space and time. Space has the quality of coordinateness, XYZ coordinates, 3 or more dimensions. Therefore, time also has those qualities. That's called coordinate time. And time we know to be progressing, or always getting later and later, the flow of time, clock time. And therefore, there is also what we call clock space. Clock space is the flow or the progression of space. Things are always getting farther and farther apart. Clock space, and that is seen in the recession of the distant galaxies from the Hubble telescope, even almost a century ago. And so that's where he gets started. From there, he takes those basic assumptions along with a few other minor assumptions, and he creates an entire theoretical universe out of that. And then he plugs that theoretical universe into the so-called observed or scientific universe and see how they compare. And they compare very favorably. He says that pretty much 90% of his universe works seamlessly with the currently existing scientific universe. There's only the differences on the margins. He says in the realm of the very fast, the very slow, the very small, the very large. Same with the relativistic equations, basically. That's what Einstein was doing when he was coming up with his theories of relativity in the early 20th century, is that he was pretty much agreeing with everything that Newton is saying from 2.5 centuries before, but except in the relativistic realms, the realms of the very fast, the very small, the very slow, and the very fast. And then Einstein provided, or basically stole some equations from other people. I won't say stole, but plagiarized or just borrowed from other people those different equations from Minkowski and Lorentz in order to plug into his theory. Okay, so that's where we are. Right now we are going over his book that's called Nothing But Motion, and this is from the first of his 3-volume work called Structure of the Physical Universe, second edition. This book came out in 1979, and we are in chapter 1. He's just going over the introductory material, and just he's been taking time to kind of poke holes into the universe of matter concept. So we're going to start right here and let him take over. But just as the agreement with previous experience criterion breaks down when experiment or observation enters new fields, so the agreement with orthodox theory criterion breaks down when it is applied to proposals for revision of the currently accepted theoretical fundamentals. When agreement with the existing theoretical structure is set up as the criterion by which the validity of new ideas is to be judged, any new thought that involves a significant modification of previous theory is automatically branded as unacceptable. Whatever merits it may actually have, it is, in effect, wrong by definition. Obviously, a strict and undeviating application of this basic agreement criterion cannot be justified, as it would bar all major new ideas. A new basic concept cannot be fitted into the existing conceptual framework, as that framework is itself constructed of other basic concepts, and a conflict is inevitable. As in the case of experience, it is necessary to recognize that there is an area in which this criterion is not legitimately applicable. In principle, therefore, practically everyone concedes that a new theory cannot be expected to agree with the theory that it proposes to replace, or with anything derived directly or indirectly from that previous theory. And again, Larson is kind of taking a lot of this in the context of Thomas Kuhn's book called The Structure of the Scientific Revolutions, a history of science book that goes over, in particular, it goes over the heliocentric theory of proposed originally by Copernicus and then propounded by Galileo, Bruno, and Newton. And how that the scientific community at that time was not ready to accept these new ideas, and so they didn't, even though there was a lot of evidence in their favor, though that evidence wasn't really considered because it threatens the scientific community, even back at 500 years ago. The people that were, tasked with teaching those teachings would have been humiliated if they all of a sudden had to say, oh, you know what, we were teaching you last week, that's all wrong. We decided that we're going to teach this way instead because our theory was not answering these various questions, and this new theory does. So we just abandoned that. That's not really how it's going to work. The only way that such a thing works is just over long periods of time. Newton's Principia came out in 1687. Copernicus's first his book on this was from 1543. And that was even 35 years after he had originally come up with the theory and told his friends and, colleagues about it, his heliocentric theory, because he didn't publish it till he was on his deathbed. because he knew that if he did publish it, he would probably immediately be on his deathbed. So he waited 35 years to really publish it, and it came out the year of his death in 1543. And still from there, it took almost another 150 years for the theory to be accepted. So that's kind of what Larson is getting at here, is that there's this blockage in the scientific community, so that even if your theory is correct and it answers all the questions and it answers all the new questions that are coming up and it makes predictions and everything, and it's a theory that the scientists claim that they're longing for, even if it does all those things, it's still, not only is it not going to be accepted, but it's not even going to get a hearing. And that is the truth, I find. I went and maybe 15, 20 years ago, I went and at the university where I went to graduate school, I went to a physicist. I was in the history department, but I went to a physicist and I talked to them about Larson's theory. And the response was, after about 5 minutes of me, kind of explaining what Larson's theory is about and everything, she said, I've never heard of him. And of course, you know that time only has one dimension. Now, get out of my office, and you're lucky that you chose to talk with me, because I'm being a lot nicer than the chair of the department, who would have, she didn't say this, but who would have, torn you a new one had you come talk to him. So she's basically saying, I'm the good cop here. I'm the good person, and that's why I'm only kicking you out of out of my office on the basis of the fact that I've never heard of him, and of the assumption that, of course, you know that time only has one dimension. Now that goes against Larson's coordinate time, that time has 3 or more dimensions. So anyway, in other words, she did not give me the time of day, and she did not give the theory the time of day. It's beneath her to do so. And so that is pretty much the way that the scientific community goes about it, in my experience. Okay, back to Larson. And in Larson's experience too, because he experienced this as the author of the theory, 1,000 times more than what I experienced, of just a person who's studied the theory and is trying to, let people know about it. Okay, in spite of the nearly unanimous agreement on this point, as a matter of principle, a new idea seldom gets the benefit of it in actual practice. In part, this is due to the difficulties that are experienced in trying to determine just what features of current thought are actually affected by the theory replacement. This is not always clear on first consideration, and the general tendency is to overestimate the effect that the proposed change will have on prevailing ideas. In any event, the principal obstacle that stands in the way of a proposal for changing a scientific theory or concept is that the human mind is so constituted that it does not want to change its ideas, particularly if they are ideas of long standing. This is not so serious in the realm of experience, because the innovation that is required here generally takes the form of an assertion that things are different in the particular new area that is under consideration, such an assertion does not involve a repudiation of previous experience. It merely contends that there is a hitherto unknown limit beyond which the usual experience is no longer applicable. This is the explanation for the almost incredible latitude that the theorists are currently being allowed in the experience area. The scientist is prepared to accept the assertion that the rules of the game are different in a new field that is being investigated, even where the new rules involve such highly improbable features as events that happen without causes and objects that change their locations discontinuously. Now, what he's, in my opinion, what he's saying right here is that, first of all, in the case of Larson's theory, um, the objections to Larson's theory are a lot of times because of the fear of the scientists that they would have to make too many adjustments to accommodate this new theory, which is a backward way of thinking in the first place. But in the second place, it's also a problem because it's wrong. Like I said, Larson's theory, it takes about 9/10 of science and accepts it, whole cloth. So the only changes that really need to be made are on the margins. But they're still fundamental and important, but they really are only on the margins of the very fast, the very small, and so on. But scientists tend to overestimate that and think, oh, well, if this theory was accepted, it would be over for me. My whole way of thinking about this would be, thrown out the window, where that is really not exactly true. It would just adjust a few different things. And then second of all, what he's saying is that when you get to a point with science, they're very flexible and amenable to people coming up with new ideas and new theories that kind of are only innovations or that just build on the current theory. So it just focuses on this pigeonhole, on this small area, and it goes for changes within that area but doesn't affect the whole general structure. If you're doing work like that, then you get, as Larson says, incredible latitude. And so they're saying, oh, well, there's all these new areas that we're investigating, in particular, in this case, having to do with quarks and other atomic constituents, in order to kind of salvage the universe of matter concept. But if you want to overthrow the whole cart and say the universe of matter concept is that is what is causing the problems that we're having. That is what is making it that we can't answer these questions, that there are so many other questions coming up, and that there is so much anomalous evidence out there now. It's not because we don't understand the matter concept well enough. It's that the matter concept is wrong in and of itself, and we can't solve the question by the same level of thinking that that got us into the problem in the first place. That's Einstein's quote in the first place. So Einstein is really just kind of sabotaging himself when he says that, because that's not the way that he really went about that. Einstein himself was using, I won't even say it with Einstein, but with the quantum mechanists and the rest of 20th century science, that they have been attempting to kind of put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound of what the matter concept is, and bending over backwards to defend this concept and adjust it instead of just using Larson and dismantling it. I'm not a chaos agent. I'm not in favor of dismantling something for no reason. And I'm not even in favor of dismantling something even if you do have a reason, if you don't have a replacement. But Larson is providing a replacement. And that's the main difference, is that he is rejecting what is currently available, but he's simultaneously supplying a replacement. Okay. Sorry to talk so much commentary on this, but this is the kind of key material because it's the history of science, and so it's providing the context for where we're at here, and where Larson found himself as he, started to arrive at his theories. On the other hand, a proposal for modification of an accepted concept of theory calls for an actual change in thinking, something that the human mind almost automatically resists and generally resents. Here, the scientist usually reacts like any layman. He promptly rejects any intimation that the rules which he has already set up and which he has been using with confidence are wrong. He is horrified at the mere suggestion that the many difficulties that he is experiencing in dealing with the parts of the atom and the absurdities or near absurdities that he has had to introduce into his theory of atomic structure are all due to the fact that the atom is not constructed of parts. Okay. So that is where we're going to end here. I just wanted to just comment that, that is exactly what I've found in my experience. And I'm sure Larson went through this experience way more than I've ever gone through it, because he was the author of the theory. But, when you get right down to it, scientists, even though they pretend that they're, impartial and that they just follow the facts and that they're doing science, ultimately they're still humans and they act in human ways. And they, as Larson says, they resist and resent having to make changes, regardless of the truth. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll tune in tomorrow with more. Have a great day.